Everyone says relationships take work, including myself. But what if I told you the best thing that you can do for your relationship right now is to stop working so hard on it and stop caring so much and just be happier as a person? Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but the truth is the happiest relationships don't just come from working on the relationship, they come from you being a happier person yourself. And I've experienced this myself in my own relationship. I'll share a bit more later, but think about it. If you're feeling good, you naturally communicate better. You have more patience, more understanding, and you don't overanalyze every little thing your partner does so much. Like you don't nitpick as much as you might if you're like feeling frustrated or annoyed or just like in a mood. Like I know when I'm in a bad mood, it really annoys me when my husband crunches his food really loudly. He has this tendency, like if he's eating chips or a carrot, he'll like bite down really hard on the first bite and with his mouth open and everything, and it's super loud. And then he'll chew like normally and with his mouth closed. But when I'm feeling, just not happy or in a bad mood or like just on edge, it really annoys me. But when I'm happy for whatever reason, or I should say maybe obviously, it doesn't bother me quite as much. Obviously, it still bothers me, but we can laugh about it as a couple. And let's be honest, your energy is just more attractive when you're happy, and it's better for you just as a person too, right? So in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 simple ways to become a happier person so your relationship can thrive. Hi, beautiful souls. Mireille Nicole here, relationship coach, and I'm all about guiding you towards your happily ever after and helping you tackle the tough stuff in love with grace and wisdom. Before I start, just let me get personal here for a little bit. So when I look back on years 3 to 6 of my relationship with my husband, which is when I'd say we hit like a rough patch together as a couple, I can honestly say that I wasn't at my happiest. Like, granted, this period of time also overlapped with the pandemic, and there was a lot of stuff happening in terms of our blended family and custody stuff. But I think the biggest mistake I made looking back during that period was that I was not being intentional about doing things that made me happy and making sure I wasn't losing myself in love again. And it's weird for me to say that because I always share after how my first after my first marriage, after my divorce, I realized that I had found myself again and I wasn't being who I truly was. But as I entered this new relationship, I was being myself, but then that started falling by the wayside. I started losing myself once more because I wasn't being intentional about it and I wasn't realizing or hadn't realized the power of really being happy and yourself, right? So I had to suffer the consequences from year 3 to 6, where I was really focused on my relationship and the people around me and around us. So at this point, I can't stress enough how important it is to never lose sight of yourself. It's not selfish. I know a lot of people will say that, and you can feel, you might feel a lot of shame towards yourself for thinking that way, but it's actually harmful to stop focusing on yourself. Everyone benefits from you being the happiest version of yourself. Also, you are the powerful creator of your life and your love story, and everything around you is a reflection of what's going on inside. It took me 3 years, like I said, to realize this and to say, hey, wait a minute, like this isn't me, and I'm not liking who I'm being right now. So with this video and actually all the videos I post, I'm hoping that I can help you avoid going through the struggle that I went through, or at least help you get out of it a lot faster. Because when I finally did, everything shifted and we found our way back to the honeymoon phase of our relationship, and I found my way back to me. So here are 3 simple ways you can become a happier person and thrive as a couple. Are you ready? Number 1, smile more. Yes, it's science, and yes, hopefully it doesn't trigger you. I did a whole video on smiling more. I'll link to it up here if you haven't seen it yet. But I used to get kind of triggered by that example too for many reasons. I explain it in more depth in the video I'll link to here, but it is backed by science. And I know what you might be thinking. So I'm just supposed to fake smile my way to happiness? Well, Kinda. That's kind of what I'm saying here. Research actually shows that the physical act of smiling tricks your brain into releasing dopamine and serotonin, the happy chemicals. And this is actually called the facial feedback hypothesis. The concept has an actual name. And when I was Googling it and looking into it, I realized that this is a Darwinist concept. Darwin and someone else came up with this, but it's a whole idea that one's facial expression directly affects your emotional experience. And I actually tested this myself. So if you watch the video I linked to, and in that video, I shared an example about how a few years ago, probably because the video is a few years old now, my husband and I, we were just like word seeing eye to eye on something. I think it was probably something related to our blended family at the time. So if you're remarried, blending a family, back in the love dating scene after divorce, you will know that there are extra challenges there. And anyways, we weren't seeing eye to eye, and we just like left the conversation at some point, and we were at the cottage at that point, and I was feeling in the mood, and I just knew that, I had to get myself out of this mood because it was not going to be productive and it was going to spiral out of control and just not get any better. So I went out in the woods and I was reflecting. And at one point, at first I just wanted to get my mood to be neutral again. You don't have to go from super angry to like super happy. That might be very hard. And I know, me being a sensitive and emotional person, that is very hard for me to do. So I will always try to just like move myself down the spectrum slowly, just to at least improve my emotional state. And after a while, when I was feeling good and neutral, then I started practicing just smiling. And I did this out in nature, right? So it's only like the chipmunks and the squirrels and the birds that were seeing me. If you do this out in public, it might look weird to just randomly smile out of nowhere. So maybe just go in a space where you can be by yourself. But after that moment, I went back to the cottage after kind of my walk in my nature meditation, let's call it. And my husband and I were able to work something out pretty quickly and move past it. So smiling, I'm telling you, has something so powerful in it. It might feel weird. You might look odd if there are people around, but I promise you, your brain will start catching up. And the other thing that's nice is when you start smiling more, or when you start smiling, your partner will pick up on that. It'll make him feel more relaxed. If you're doing it not in the context of an argument like I just shared, but just day to day, just smiling more, he'll think you're just, really happy, and that, things, are going to be okay. And it's going to make him a lot more confident and open and less defensive on his end too. So there are just benefits all around, not just for yourself, but obviously for your partner and your relationship as a whole. So here's my challenge for you. Try this week to find a moment where, when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling unhappy or disappointed, or for whatever reason, just try this. Force yourself to smile for, let's say, 30 seconds. Do this and let me know how it goes in the comments. Number 2, emotionally detach, but in a kind and compassionate way. I have so many videos on my channel about detaching emotionally. This is actually one of my favorite topics and one of the most powerful things I did in my relationship to bring us back to that honeymoon phase. It's definitely one of the biggest things also that made me happier in my relationship. I stopped being so emotionally dependent on my partner. I definitely identify as an empath. Like I said earlier, I'm super sensitive. So any person's mood around me would really affect me back in the day if I wasn't being intentional and if I wasn't protecting my energy. And I was really feeling that in my relationship. It was really affecting our dynamic, because if my partner was in a bad mood, I would find myself in a bad mood. If he didn't, I don't know, validate me or hear me, I felt worthless, right? Like there was a really strong link between my partner's mood and my partner's words and actions in the situation and how I was feeling. So I was not taking emotional leadership in my relationship. And I hate to use the word leadership because then it sounds like a masculine energy thing. And I'm always talking about feminine energy. But I really think that when you can master your emotions, that's still a feminine thing. It's not the same as trying to fix your partner. It's really the internal work that allows you to receive and change the environment around you and start being cherished like the goddess self that you are. So I realized that I was being very codependent and that my happiness was dependent on things going well in the relationship, me and my partner agreeing, me and my partner being on the same page on things like on health and on politics and what was going on in the world. But that was really codependency. So I had to learn something powerful, which was that his emotions are his and my emotions are mine. And this is something I still work on, to this day. I am still very much an empath. I am still sensitive, but I have a lot more emotional mastery in terms of what's going on around me and what other people are experiencing. And then what do I take from that? And how does that impact my own behavior and reactions and how I show up in my relationship and in the world? So the moment that I stopped making his mood, my partner's mood, my responsibility, my whole vibe just changed and I became just lighter, more fun to be around. So I was benefiting from doing this. I wasn't just doing this because I was trying to fix my partner or fix the relationship. Like ultimately, I wanted things to get better, but instead of doing all this over analysis of everyone else, I just let things flow. And I started really focusing within and what was going on in my emotional world and how that was changing how I was seeing the world around me and what was actually happening around me. And you know what? He actually became more attracted to me during that time. Clearly, being a happy person, being fun to be around is going to be attractive to your partner or to men in general if you're dating. So here's your takeaway for number 2. If your happiness is too tied to your partner, I want you to try this. All right. So whenever you feel anxious about their mood, ask yourself, is this really mine to carry? And you'll see the answer is usually no. And if you'd like more support on this, download my emotional detachment cheat sheet for free. I'll post the link down in the comments here and put it in the description too. And if you want to dive even deeper on this topic, I have a whole course called the Emotional Freedom Formula that will guide you through mastering your emotional world. And the link will be down in the description, the link on my website, and you'll see the Emotional Freedom Formula description and information there for you. All right, number 3, self-care. This is kind of an obvious one, I realize, but when was the last time that you really prioritized yourself, right? We all know we need to take better care of ourselves or take more care of ourselves. Do more self-care. Okay, I can't talk anymore. It's okay, we're in number 3 here. But when I was struggling in my relationship, I realized that I had stopped doing a lot of the things that made me happy in general, in my relationship and just life in general. I wasn't hanging out with my girlfriends as much. I wasn't moving my body and exercising as much as I used to, and I'm a super sporty person. I was just so focused on us that I lost me. And by self-care, I don't mean just taking bubble baths. That's a treat. That's a reward for the actual self-care that you do. So when I'm talking about self-care, I mean like on all levels, like bigger levels, like physically, like self-care in terms of physically, emotionally, financially, intellectually, experientially, spiritually, right? That's self-care when you're looking at these big pillars in your life, these big important areas in your life. And these are things we look at, or I look at with the women I coach with in terms of the relationship too. But when it comes to self-care, kind of look to see, how are you feeling there? Are you really nurturing those areas? Are you really nurturing your physical self, your emotional self, your financial self, intellectually? So anyways, I finally made a change. Unfortunately, like I said, it took me 3 years to realize this. And those are 3 years, obviously, I could never take back or get back. But I finally started doing even just small things at the beginning, right? So I started going out with my friends more often. I got back into exercise so I could feel stronger and more confident and release those brain chemicals too, those happy hormones. Like, I believe you don't have to just do this, just on willpower, right? Use your physique and movement and nutrition to help you feel happier too. It's all interrelated and you don't have to just willpower your way into things. Your body wants to help you feel good and happy. I also started doing things like reading more books, right? And you know what happened after I started doing all these things? My relationship got better. And I didn't do it in a way that was pushing away my husband. So that's really important to consider in terms of doing the emotional work and doing the self-care. I never did it in a way where my partner felt like I was pushing him away or making him feel bad if he was on a different journey and not doing those things. I really did it so that when I could come back and see my husband, I could like smile easier and be happier because I was doing those things for myself. Why? Because I was not waiting on my partner to change or work on himself and go to therapy. I didn't need anything else to happen. I was taking radical responsibility for my own happiness and my own relationship too. I became a happier person on my own, and that energy completely transformed the dynamic. Like I love to say, you have so much more power in your relationship than you currently think. So here's the takeaway for number 3. Make a list right now. Take out a piece of paper, a pen, or just on your phone. Actually, it's 2025, Mireille, hello. Make a list right now. What are 5 things that make you happy outside of your relationship? And go do one of those things this week. So let's recap. Number 1, smile more. Your brain and your partner will thank you. Number 2, emotionally detach. It's not your job to carry your partner's emotions. Number 3, prioritize self-care. Become someone you actually enjoy being around. And if you're struggling in your relationship and want to fix what's broken, I made a whole video walking you through exactly how. So click here to watch it next. And hey, before you go, what's one thing that you do that instantly lifts your mood? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know.